What's up, Adam? Thanks for coming on the podcast. Let's just start with some of the stories that we've had together, such as, why don't you go ahead and tell the story of us in my parents' basement in high school.
Justin, that's a great story, man. I love telling that freaking story.
I know.
It has probably been one of your nicknames for a good long while, but gosh, how old are we? I mean, we had to be over 21 because we were drinking, right? I mean, it had to be.
Yeah.
We'll keep it on the legal side. So we were down there, I think we were playing some stupid game where you had to take a shot once a minute for 60 minutes called the Power Hour, I think. Yeah, some stupid game like that. Well, about 45 minutes in, Justin, you looked a little rough. We ended up looking at you and saying, "You don't look very healthy, Helmer." And about that time, you put your hand to your mouth and puked through every one of your fingers. And
True story.
it was a brilliant show.
Yeah.
Show. And ever since then, I think you've been called Healthy Helmer for occasions.
Only you, but now this is probably going to carry out to the world, and now I'll be... Now everyone will call me that. Yeah, I was trying to keep it pretty down low, but there was no hiding it once it comes through your fingers.
No. Now you're recorded you're going on the internet. This is this is fair game now. Healthy Helmer is out in the internets.
Great. I'll just change the podcast to the Healthy Helmer.
Hey, I like it. It rhymes. It flows off the tongue well.
Another great story is a friend of ours, Aaron Randall, had this old, what year was that Toyota?
Oh gosh, it had to be something in the 80s.
83 or 4.
4, yeah, 83.
Corolla?
84. I think it was a Corolla.
Two-door Corolla, rear-wheel drive, had a V-School aftermarket bumper on it.
Yeah, a nice tube welded on the front of it by, teenage kids. Yes. Looked great. Very custom.
Yeah. So we went to Fort Wheeling in a subdivision. Well, it's a subdivision now. Wasn't there. It was just field and dirt. And, of age, we're 21 drinking.
Yeah. We were definitely legal.
And we're like, we're just going to hit this little jump. Well, on the other side of that jump, I'm passenger. And there was just another dirt mountain straight ahead. We hit it, stopped. And my head hit the windshield and spired it. I didn't get a scratch. Not a scratch on me. And people were like, and the whole window cracked.
I think that's some of what's wrong with you today. I think that may have impacted the rest of your life.
Probably.
We don't know it.
Yeah. That's why we don't tell that story too much. And then just a couple years ago, I was living in a subdivision close to a party that you were at, and you guys came and got me on the side-by-side. And you're like, just sit in the back. And I sat on the cooler, and the driver, our friend Tony Imholt, it's like, I'm going to go a different way. We're like, all right. And we weren't going fast. He was just, felt like he was just kind of scouting around. And there was a huge sinkhole or something, was it?
There was something he was trying to do. And I just want to make sure that, everybody knows I was not the driver. I was an innocent victim in this thing as well.
And the whole side-by-side literally went in it, and my face hit the cab part. And we're like, everyone all right? And I'm like, I thought it was just beer, because literally I had a half beer, and it was just blood pouring from my face. I had to get 9 stitches underneath my nose.
The theme to a lot of these stories are you hitting your head on things. I think we might just have to put you in a helmet.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah.
So I was trying to figure out, when I was prepping for the show, how we met. And I guess just hang around the same group of people. It had to have been.
It had to be. I can't really remember, any formal introduction. It's just one of those things. We ended up with the same people and hanging out, had the same interests, and had a good time.
Yeah. And I guess maybe, I'm sure four-wheelers, dirt bikes, four-wheeling had something to do with that.
Agreed. Yeah, that was a big thing back then.
Beer drinking. Well, no, we waited till we were 21.
Yeah, that was 21. That was after 21.
So when did you first get started in riding dirt bikes or any of that?
My first dirt bike was Christmas of the 5th grade.
Okay.
That was my very, very, very first one. It was an 84 XR80. That was an awful piece of equipment. It ran about as much as it was broken down. It was about a solid 50-50 piece of equipment. And nobody knew how to work on it. I'm a 5th grader. I couldn't work on it. My parents were mechanics. Nobody knew how to work on this thing. So luckily a fellow rider's dad was a mechanic, and we suckered him into fixing this poor thing more times than he should have. But It was a very scary intro to dirt bikes. I was like, this is not a whole lot of fun. I don't get to ride this thing a whole lot, but luckily, we stuck with it and it came through. We got some better bikes and started having a little more fun, a little more riding, a little less wrenching.
Yeah. So you lived in that subdivision off 18 when you got your first bike? What do they call that? I don't know what that's called.
What the heck is the name of that thing? It's off Camp Ernst.
Yeah.
Lordy. I've forgotten, but it's the
That's
first one on the
is
left.
that Willow Bend? That's what they call it?
They very well might be.
I don't know, yeah.
I don't know. First one on the left. Past that
where'd you
big
ride
picture.
at when you were young?
We rode where that new Kroger's is on 18.
Okay.
That was all in that church. What is that? The Church of Christ, I think.
Okay.
There. That was our riding grounds. And and where the Kroger is, right across from the old IGA on 18, it was where we grew up and got to ride it. And we probably had 200 acres that was more or less claimed by us.
Yeah.
There were a few times we'd get run off, but it wasn't, it was owned by, some corporations and wasn't being developed. And man, we got many, many, many good years out of riding back there with cutting trails and everything. So, none of our parents had farms, so that was our riding area. And luckily, we were able to drive and stuff by the time they developed the apartments and the Krogers and the big church. But we were really sad to lose that riding area.
Yeah.
You always are when you see something like that. But, the area was growing up. It was a lot more rural when we all were kids. So,
For sure. You also had that, I guess it was like a motocross track. There's only a couple jumps right in front of the subdivision.
Yeah, right across from that FAA tower on Camp Ernst. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we used to stupidly race the cars in a straightaway down Camp Ernst. So, yeah, that was probably not the greatest idea, One wrong move and then you're in the road with the cars.
So, were you more into motocross or just more just trail riding?
More trails. We always rode the woods, so we never really had access to a motocross track because none of us could drive, and our parents didn't even really have trucks. We were kind of stuck with wherever we could ride the bikes to. And since we never had a motocross track, you do a few hand-dug jumps by 14-year-olds, never really cut it. So we mostly rode trails and woods, and that's what we grew up on and still love to this day. I mean, and that's where our hearts are, I guess.
Yeah. I remember riding, I was in a side-by-side or car when we went to Haspin way back in the day, and you were on a YZ250, I think.
That's correct. I think, man, it was a 93 YZ250. I loved that motorcycle. That was a great bike.
But, man, you didn't seem like you had a lot of fear back then.
I think that's just being a young kid. I don't think any of us did, I mean, as you said, one of the stories, we're out four-wheeling a 84 Toyota Corolla.
Right.
So, I think we were a little reckless and fearless and, all the things that stupid teenagers or young 20s would do, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you would hit the motocross track, then you hit the trails, and I'm like, dude, this dude's great on a dirt bike.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. These days, I take them anywhere I can get them. I don't know. I was at least great in my own mind.
Remember when we were at the Haspin trip, I don't know the kid's name, but he brought that Oldsmobile up there, and he had no, catalytic converter.
Oh, what was that guy's name? Yes.
Jeremy something.
Jeremy.
That thing was just rolling out black smoke.
It was rolling out black smoke, and he brought that up there. I think it got stuck.
He got lost on the way up there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this was well before GPS. And,
yeah.
I mean, I think this was pre-MapQuest even, I mean, we're showing our age and we're telling this internet story.
Yeah, I don't know, but I remember he's like, I've already burned a tank of gas. Get up here,
Jeremy Short.
Maybe. Yeah.
I don't remember, but I remember him bringing that car up there. That was wild. He only came up that one time, I think, but I think he enjoyed himself even without nothing to ride. I mean, there's always half ride, half party around the campfire.
Oh, for sure.
When we didn't mind sleeping in tents and 3 hours of sleep, and you could still get up and go. Now if I'm not sleeping in a cabin, I don't think I want to go.
I know, and I don't get if I'm not in bed by 10 and get up at full 8 hours. I'm like, it's gonna be a long day.
It's gonna be a long day.
And then that same trip, we had that same Toyota car up there, and we painted flames on it. But we took her out, and people were like, "What is this thing?" Because it went everywhere.
It did. It was actually a great off-road vehicle. I was very impressed. This was our side-by-side well before side-by-sides ever even were, being mentioned. So
that thing was indestructible.
it really was. I can't believe the torture we put that poor car through. And we did paint flames on it, I think, at Haspin.
Yeah, painted flames on it.
Yeah.
How old were you when you first started racing?
Probably 14. I remember one of our friends' dads had a truck, and we talked him into taking us to a race. So it was probably 14 years old. So it was quite a while. We rode for quite a while before we actually started being able to get to races and stuff. And bum rides from people's parents that would let us throw 3 bikes in the back and sit there and wait for 4 hours while we raced and drive us down there. So that's what really got us into it. Then we raced, probably a handful of times, having somebody come down and drop us off, and then once we could start driving, it was. We were open, free to the world, as you would say.
All hare scrambles?
All hare scrambles. We'd, dabble in a motocross here and there, but only if we were at a place that was having a motocross. We never really, I guess, sought out a motocross track. But if we were up at Haspin riding and there was a motocross going on, we'd enter just for the fun. None of us were terribly good.
Right.
But we entered and enjoyed it. It was a great just addition to a fun weekend, I guess you'd say.
Were you, did you get, like, serious? Like, did you do, like, a whole hare scramble series? Or did you just kind of, when there was a race, you felt like doing?
It was more like whenever we felt like doing. I mean, back then we weren't real aware of how to chase points or series or anything. So I guess it wasn't until, probably late teens, early 20s that I really went after a series down at Eagle Creek and tried to, collect points and stuff for the year. So that
race. Yeah, I remember that. They don't have that anymore. It's been gone for a while, right?
They don't run any races down there anymore, but the old guy still is alive. What is his name? Jim. Oh gosh, I lose his last name. But he is still kicking, and you can go down there on the weekends and ride. He doesn't do any organized events anymore. But Jim Darlington. Darlington was his name. But yeah, he's still kicking and still running open on the weekends. So yeah, you can go down there and ride, but he just doesn't do any organized events anymore. But it's pretty cool. He's still open.
So you said when you had your first bike, obviously you were too young to wrench on your bike. When did you start doing your own, being your own mechanic?
Oh, on that first bike, I did what I could, and I always just had to do what I could. It was a lot of probably more hurtful wrenching than anything. I was probably tearing the bike up more by trying to fix it than I was fixing it. But that's what I had to do. I just had to collect tools here and there and keep working on the bikes because I wanted to ride, and that was the only way to do it.
Yeah, so I mean, there was no YouTube back then to look at a video.
Unfortunately not. That would have been a whole lot better.
It makes mechanics look a lot better now.
Yeah, I had a left-handed screwdriver and a metric adjustable, and that was pretty much my toolbox. So
from there on out, it just he just kept tinkering with it and getting better and better.
Yeah. I didn't have any formal education and any sort of technical training until vocational school in high school. So by then I was pretty competent, and at least working on the bikes, but it was trial and error, learning this from this person, learning that from this person. I had a subscription to a dirt bike magazine, and sometimes they'd give tech tips and stuff in there. So it was a collection of, a decade of having to wrench on this poor motorcycle that sometimes it was more experimental than anything, but that's how it came about. It wasn't any sort of magical moment. It was a very, very slow, gradual process.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's how, basically back then, with no internet or anything, that's how you learned.
Yeah. I mean, I don't fault my parents or anything, but they just weren't into, they weren't mechanical.
Yeah.
So I just had to pick it up. If I wanted to ride, I had to fix the bike, and I didn't have money to pay anybody to do it.
Right.
So I just had to learn.
Did your dad ride at all?
Nope. He's never ridden. Just never really had the interest. I think he could have if he'd have been introduced at a younger age, but, he was always more on the sports side of things, football, basketball, track, things like that. So he was more interested in that. So that's just a path he took, and I took motorcycles, I think it was just a different introduction to a different thing and a different life point. So
what do you think kept your draw going towards motorcycles versus like ball sports like your dad and all them?
I can't really say. It's just something inside.
Yeah.
It's just either you like doing it or you don't like doing it. Or, there's some middle ground there, but a lot of people just toy with it as a hobby. But it was It was just a draw to it. I just really enjoyed it. It was something I always enjoyed. The minute I got on it, I was like, this is something I like doing.
Yeah.
And that's it. I can't really explain it. It's nothing. It's one of those intangible objects that you
Yeah, I guess
see.
it's basically with every sport with anybody in a sense.
It is. It is. If you like it, you'd like it. And
Yeah.
everybody's just a little bit different. And motorcycles and, two-wheeled things, even bicycles, I just liked,
Yeah.
And,
I remember when we were at Haspin, there were some couple dudes on trials bikes, and they were doing like some like short uphills, real steep stuff, and you just took that YZ and just did the exact same thing they did, and they were like, "What the?" They were,
yeah, I was a lot younger and skinnier then. I could be a little more nimble on the bike.
Is that what drawed you first in the trials bikes?
No, my first experience with a trials bike was Joel Brown's dad, and we were riding with him. I bought my second bike from them, and I was out riding with them, and he had some trials bikes. So he put me on it. I had just a limited experience, rode it for 20 minutes, was off of it, never really thought about it again. I mean, I was probably 12, 13 years old. And then, so that put the spark of what a trials bike was, I guess, in my mind. After that, I never really thought about trials. It was always something that kind of intrigued me, but I never got into. And the first introduction to actually riding a trials bike, riding it, was my now wife, Kim, was starting to ride. And I wanted something that I could follow her around on and go slow, stop, teach her, do this, do that. Well, I found a cheap trials bike for $800 just down the road in Louisville. And I was like, I'm going to go get this thing. It's something that'll be easy. It's light. I can play with it. I can help her. We went out and rode a few times, for a couple weeks. And I just fell in love with the thing. It was just one of those things that you rode and it just put a smile on your face. So after about 3 weeks, this was an old like 94 Fantic by a company that didn't even exist anymore. It was it ran, it moved, but it just wasn't great. I went out and bought a new gas trials bike and just fell in love with it. So we started riding almost solely trials events.
Yeah.
And just got into it. I even, I slowly progressed Kim into it by getting her. She was walking the section and taking pictures of me, just to be involved in the event. And, I liked the pictures, so she was taking them. Then I got her to start riding the loop on her little TTR 125. Well, then she got a little more peer pressure from me and other people, and they said, well, you're already riding the loop. You might as well enter and ride the novice lines. So then we got her entered, and now she's riding the novice lines at a trials event on a TTR 125. So it was just such a weird, slow progression that then even we got her on a trials bike.
Yeah.
And we both were just riding trials all the time, and it was great. And we almost got out of the, we still had some regular dirt bikes, go fast bikes, but we weren't really riding them, and we spent a couple years just solely doing the trials. And then we moved to Mississippi with Kim's job transfer, and there were no trials events. But there were the regular dirt bike events, some hare scrambles and stuff like that. So we got back into the other bikes and never really have returned back to trials, but we still have kept the trials bikes and played with them, but we've never really competed again, except for at vintage days. We'll compete on the vintage trials bikes at vintage days just because it's fun to drag some 40-year-old thing out of the barn and see if you can even get it to run, let alone compete.
Yeah, right.
So that's the whole trials fiasco. That's
actually pretty cool. I didn't know all that. Yeah, I just remember. I just knew about that day in Haspin. That's actually pretty cool. Yeah, because I was saying right before we started recording, we were in your garage, and I was like, I don't see any trials bikes in here, but I know some part in your life that was a big deal.
They're still here. They're hiding in the house garage. So,
okay.
Yeah, just to create a little more room, we moved them into the garage that's attached to the house where we should be parking cars, but we're storing more motorcycles.
So to me, that's a hoarder in a good way.
It is. I'm starting a collection. Kim looks at me and she's like, I'm always surfing the internet for a motorcycle, and she's like, why can't you just look at porn on the internet like a regular person? I'm like, no, I want to look at motorcycles.
This is porn.
This is porn. It's motorcycle porn.
So have you done, in a sense, have you rode / raced every kind of motorcycle or dirt bike thing there is, in a sense.
In a sense, other than like speedway or circle track bikes, I've never ever done that. I've never really had a terrible interest in it, but it's something I would try. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, who doesn't like trying something? I've just never been in an arena where I could try it with a bike. So I've never even gone around a flat track. Just never have. I've worked on some flat track bikes and stuff, but I've never actually gotten to go around on the circle and see what it's like.
You should do that, and then somebody should create you've done it all.
Yeah, like a checklist.
Yeah.
Like, hey, what have you tried?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Yeah, that was a great idea, man.
So you spoke of vintage bikes. How long you been doing that? That's up in mid Ohio. How long you been part of that?
We are probably going on our 5th year of the vintage stuff. And that's something I was never terribly interested in until my unfortunate buddy Danny Ray brought over a vintage bike out of his CR250 Elsinore. He brought this over and needed work. And I said, I've never touched anything like this. I don't know what this is. I was like, I will take a crack at it, but there are no guarantees on this thing. So he got me working on this bike, and then he got me to go up there and see it. You know, we just went up and camped and kind of hung out, and I was like, man, you know what? This is pretty cool. So the next year we bought a vintage trials bike, and you know, had to piece some of it together and do this and that. But it was fun trying to get this 40-year-old bike that wasn't terribly reliable when it was new up and going again. So we really, really, really kind of weirdly got into it. You know, we aren't racing them other than at vintage days or competing on them other than at vintage days. But it's gotten to the point where now we have a vintage trials bike. Now we have a vintage hare scramble bike. You know,
Yeah.
so they're starting to collect.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I seen you had a couple in the garage.
yeah. So we've done some work on some for the other people. You know, once it's kind of hard to find somebody to work on. Most shops don't want to work on anything that old because you're one stripped out bolt away from losing 4 hours of your life. So more has to be for buddies. You know, friend stuff. But yeah, we've taken on the role of vintage bike mechanics, which I am not sure is a good thing, but we have done it.
I heard the swap meet up there is pretty sweet.
The swap meet, they say it's the biggest vintage swap meet in the U.S. I can't, verify that because it's the only one I've ever been to, but it is big. To cover it and cover it well, you pretty much have to be in a golf cart. It would take all day and pretty much sap all your energy to walk it and look at every bit.
Really?
It is intense.
Was there anything you that caught your eye, or you?
I wanted a 3-wheeler, and Kim would not let me buy the 3-wheeler.
Really?
So Kim said no 3-wheelers. My wife said no, you are not getting a vintage 3-wheeler. Do I need a vintage 3-wheeler? Absolutely not. Did I want a vintage 3-wheeler? Absolutely. I have no idea why. I'd probably never even have ridden it, but I loved it.
Yeah, I think I don't think 3-wheelers are coming back per se, but I think they're coming back as a collector.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I didn't even ride that many 3-wheelers when I was a kid. You know, I mean, there was a couple, an ATC 70 or something that I rode, but nothing that I ever seriously rode. So why I would want it, I don't have any idea. I guess just for the sake of having a 3-wheeler. I never really had a 3-wheeler, so.
Yeah, I got on one time. Didn't even go anywhere. I sat on it like it was running. I was gonna ride next, and my dad's like, "Nope," because they were getting that was right at the peak of them getting so dangerous.
Yeah. I don't think they quit making them because they were safe. I think there was a pretty solid reason they quit making them, but. Yeah, just the thought of being able to run down the driveway and check the mail on a 3-wheeler really, really appealed to me. Whether or not
Most
that
people's golf cart or walk.
Yeah,
three-wheeler.
I wanted a 3-wheeler, for some absurd reason.
So, also in the garage, you got an adventure bike. Can you talk a little bit some places you rode, how you got into that?
Yes, I can't 100% remember how I got into it, but I started riding some street bikes. I bought a couple of, the sport bikes, the crotch rockets, and just never liked the seating position on them. Just never could get into it. I didn't really like the laid down style. It just wasn't my thing.
What
So
about Harley? Couldn't do that?
well, I just never was into a cruiser,
Yeah.
I've never really taken to cruisers. I've ridden a few, but it just really wasn't what I wanted. So I bought a DR650 that was kind of more of a dirt bike with a license plate. and started riding it and really liked it. You know, I could blast some gravel roads and still ride it home. So I guess that's where the adventure bike bug started. And then, you know, you start reading about it and they became more and more popular. So they started having trails and tracks for them where you could do like a big loop and it was all as much gravel roads and stuff as you could piece in and still on public land.
Is this local to Cincinnati or?
There's some local stuff and there's some national stuff. There's one called the CAT, the KAT, Kentucky Adventure Trail, and it's down through about Lexington to eastern Kentucky and then back into western Kentucky, kind of by Land by the Lakes. Or Land Between the Lakes. That's what that is.
Yeah, LBL.
And it takes about 2.5 days to ride, and it's as much gravel and dirt as they could piece together on public land.
Really?
Yeah, so it's not terribly technically difficult because you're going to try to drag a 450-pound motorcycle through it. So, you know, you don't want it to be terribly, you know, difficult. But it's just fun to ride those bikes and stop and camp and, you know, chat with your friends and just get to see a lot of the country. Like it's
It's not a highway.
It's not a highway. It's kind of like high-speed hiking.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, high-speed hiking, you know. And they have a really cool trail. It's called the TAT, T-A-T, Trans-America Trail. And this guy down in Mississippi put it together. And it goes coast to coast on as much off-road dirt as he can put it through.
Wow.
So there's still some pavement on it, but it's as much off-road as you can cross the country in. And me and a buddy actually did it. We did the whole thing from, it wasn't coast to coast quite at that point. It started in eastern Tennessee, but we went eastern Tennessee all the way out to Oregon. Off-road. It took us
Holy cow.
it took us about 2.5 weeks. I turned 30 on the trip, so it was in Colorado, going over some passes in Colorado, and I got to turn 30 out there. So I was like, yeah, that's a pretty good 30th birthday.
Yeah, that's pretty
So
sweet.
the adventure bikes are fun. We just call them the street bikes. We
Yeah.
treat them as the street bikes, but we'll take them down and get like a nice little romantic cabin in Gatlinburg. And there's a bunch of gravel roads, and you can go out and see this elk herd and stuff on them. And it's just beautiful. It just gets you into places where you normally wouldn't go, and you feel very exposed. I mean, you know, it's a Jeep could probably make most of these trails, but it's not the same in a car.
Right.
You know, it's just not. So that's where we really use and like the adventure bikes, and that just kind of grew as well. You know, you start with one place and then you end up somewhere else, kind of like surfing the internet. You end up looking up something on Amazon. The next thing you know, you're looking at cat pictures. You don't even know how you got there. Like, how are we here and why?
Exactly. Or the when you're on YouTube and the little like side video,
Yeah, the side video.
thumbnails, you're like, I'll look at that.
Yeah, I need to look at this. What is this? You know?
And the whole time it's just the thumbnails of trickery.
It is. The next thing you're like, you know what? I do need new gutters on my house.
So, talking about these roads you're going on, like for fuel, how would you get fuel?
Luckily, if you ride some of the planned trails, like that Kentucky Adventure Trail or the Trans-America Trail, they actually have planned fuel stops in them.
Oh,
They're
okay.
about every 180 to 200 miles. So that's really nice. If we go down to Gatlinburg and plan our own trails, you have to just pretty much get on your GPS and program it and make sure you can find a gas stop. But, you know, a 200-mile day is a pretty long day. So it's pretty easy to find a gas stop somewhere in that 200 miles.
Right.
Because you'll eventually run out of gravel connections, you know, so you'll do a gravel stretch, then you'll do a couple miles on the asphalt, then back to another gravel stretch. So one of those road stretches, there's usually a gas station maybe 5 miles the other direction. So you just run down there, get fuel, and then you're back at it. So some of the real serious guys will carry extra fuel on their bikes and stuff like that. But we try to just keep it to where the bikes have the fuel range to get gas stop to gas stops.
You ever done one? You're like following a road and you're like, well, this fucking goes nowhere.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, you know, you plan these routes out and, you know, you try to use Google Street View and Google Maps and then, you know, your GPS. And some of your GPS doesn't translate over to Google Maps. And
Right.
It thinks the road's there, but it's not really there. You get there and you're like, this is gated and it's a farmer. You know, and you're like, okay, we got to turn around or find a new way. And you're sitting there on your GPS pecking off waypoints and trying to reroute around it. So that's, I guess, why they call them adventure bikes, because riding them is kind of an adventure. Even planning out the route, it's not going to go exactly like you think. Even the ones that are pre-planned by, I guess, the pros,
Yeah.
the Kentucky Adventure Trail and the Trans-America Trail, even those aren't foolproof. There's still glitches and catches and this and that. But it is, I don't know how to say it. It's interesting, I guess. Just every time you go out, it's kind of, you don't know what you're getting into. It's not going to be, put it on, Google Maps in your car, plug your phone in, and you're going to end up in New Orleans.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different, Every time you go out, you're like, well, maybe this road will be washed out. Or, maybe they'll turn this whole road into pavement. It used to be gravel, now it's pavement. So that's why it gets hard, is because the routes evolve with, progress, I guess you would say, with the counties and states going around paving all these gravel roads. Well, it used to be gravels, now asphalt.
Right.
So you lose a lot of stuff like that, especially in Tennessee. They're doing a really good job of paving all the gravel roads. I say that because it is a good job, but I dislike it.
Right.
I'd rather them be gravel for my taste, but I mean, obviously, the goal is to have everything be asphalt. So can't fault them for that, I guess. Yeah.
I was looking at some pictures on your Facebook, and you guys rode over in Europe. Yeah, how was that?
That's awesome.
Really?
It's awesome. We have poached some trails, I guess you would say, in Europe. I'm planning out trails on maps over here, and we get over there and we just follow the GPS. And we were in Germany riding, and we were on some of the most perfect gravel I'd ever seen.
Is this just you and Kim?
Just me and Kim, and we're riding these trails. And I was like, this is just absolutely beautiful. These trails are perfectly groomed. It's awesome. So we're riding them, and then we see hikers and stuff, and we're getting some weird looks. And eventually we get to a sign, and we're just kind of stopping and taking a break, and we're like, I wonder what this German sign says, I mean, we can speak enough German to get us in trouble, but we have no idea what this sign says. So we start plugging it into the translator in our phone, and it's a walking park. So we're in there just destroying this walking park with these two adventure bikes. Like, oh my God, we have got to get out of here. I do not want to know what the fine in German jail looks like if we get caught out here.
No one even said anything to you? They were just kind of stunned?
No one said anything to us. They acted like, they were giving us bad looks, but I guess they thought we knew what we were doing. We were supposed to be there, which apparently we were not. But it's super fun. We got to go over last year, and we try to rent bikes from the same guy every year. And he's
got your picture. He's like, no.
Yeah, well, that's what he should say. But he's so nice. He's a great guy, and he rents us bikes every year. Well, last year, it was the first time we had gone over and tried to ride since my accident. So I needed both controls on the same side. So he was nice enough to switch and put the brake and clutch on the same side of the bike for me, and we still got to go out and ride in Europe. So
that's pretty sweet.
It was pretty sweet, man. It was unbelievable. So we still got to do it. I didn't know if he would do it or not, and he came through for us. And
how do you understand what you were trying to relay? I guess he just kind of figured it out.
He speaks pretty good English.
Oh, okay.
So luckily we don't have to go through a whole lot of translating. He's pretty tailored to our needs, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of bike you riding over there?
This last time I rode, what in the world was that thing? It wasn't an Africa Twin. Yeah, it was a Honda Transalp.
Okay.
A Honda Transalp, which is so cool to rent stuff over there that we can't get here.
Yeah.
Even if it's not that great of a bike, like Honda Transalp's kind of like a KLR. But we can't get a Honda Transalp, so I want it. I want to ride the Honda Transalp.
That's just like, I know they just came out with the new Ford Ranger now, but over in Europe they had a Ford Ranger diesel.
Yeah.
I was like, that thing's sweet.
Yeah, we'd love to get it. Love to get it. So I don't know. It's just a little bit more fun factor, to ride something that you can't get or drive here.
Yeah.
I don't even know what a Honda Transalp is, but I want it.
So we mentioned, your wife Kim. Actually, Kim's in the room. Kim, you're welcome to join in. Did she know how much you were into riding when you guys first met?
Yeah, I believe so. There was no real hiding it. We were actually friends for a few years before we ever started dating. So we knew each other in our personal lives fairly well. So she definitely knew that I was into riding, and she didn't ride a lick. She had never even seen a motorcycle, couldn't drive a stick, I mean, was not, had never really been introduced, so wasn't into it.
Yeah.
Had never had any experience with it. Nobody had ever showed her what it could do or what life was like, but she knew that I was, into it. But now she's as addicted as I am and everyone else. So.
And so what was her first bike when you were on the trials bike? Oh, TT 125.
TTR 125, small wheel. They made 2 editions, a big wheel TTR and a small wheel TTR, and she was on the small wheel TTR, the 12-year-old's toy of choice.
Yeah. So I seen her bike in the garage now. What did she have?
She has a Beta 300 cross trainer now, so she's moved up in the world, to say the least. So.
Well, I know Kim's done some races. GNCC.
National Enduro.
Okay. She likes it. She's really into it.
She's really into it. She actually finished the season without me. So
really?
Yeah, we ran the first 3 with me, and then my unfortunate accident kept me off the bike that year, but I was still going to the races because Kim was still racing them.
So when she's not this past year, but the first year she raced, she's like, "Hey, I'm gonna race." Were you like blown by, or you're just like?
No, there was some peer pressure involved.
Oh, you're gonna race. You are gonna race.
You were gonna race. I mean, between me and the rest of our buddies, we were like, you might as well, And then once she started doing it, she's like, "Oh, I really like this." So, peer pressure. Peer pressure.
How'd she do her first race? Was there a lot of comeback like screw this or?
No, she enjoyed it. She didn't. I guess I don't want to say didn't do terribly well, but she was on a TTR 230, and it was her first national enduro. So the cards were a little bit stacked against her, for going out the first time ever running an enduro, and being on a TTR 230 is not the greatest. It's a fun machine, but it's not the greatest race machine ever. But the seat height and everything was right for her. She didn't like the tall bikes, so she raced it all season and didn't really complain a whole lot about it. But her first race, I can't remember how you placed, but it wasn't horrific, but it wasn't a triumphant return, with a lion that she killed or anything. It was.
But at least it kind of kept her, she's still wanting more.
Yeah, she is. So she still likes it. Yeah, it's.
I want to go back. I was just thinking about when you guys moved to Mississippi. What kind of bikes what did you end up riding down there?
Kim was still on the TTR 125, but she had moved up to the big wheel version of the TTR 125, and I was riding a Sherco Enduro. So I bought a Sherco Trials bike and was loving it. And it was kind of, it's kind of a weird brand in the enduro world, but it's a pretty common name in the trials bike world. So I managed to find a Sherco Enduro and was like, well, I'm riding a Sherco Trials bike, so I'm just going to get a Sherco Enduro too. That'll be cool. And I really liked it. I've actually still got it. It's a really cool bike, but it's kind of an odd item. If I were ever to sell it, I'm not sure how I would even write the ad. Since Sherco is kind of an unknown name, I'd have to end up answering more questions about it's not a Chinese bike than I would anything else. So we had those. I think you were still even when we first went down. Kim was still even riding the TTR in trials, and she went and got her trials bike when we were in Mississippi. So she got her first trials bike down there, and I had my Sherco Trials, and we built a little trials compound in our backyard with our neighbor's torn up patio rocks and a couple of those hillbilly tables, the wire spools. We had those stacks, and you could climb up those things, and built a little wall. And I wanted to build a big flat wall climb into our pond dam, but Kim refused to let me take a bobcat into the pond dam. So probably more of a smarter choice, but at the moment I was like, I want a big wall climb right there. And That'd be great. Just dig in a little bit, have a nice 5-foot wall climb.
Yeah.
That may not have worked out so well.
It's so funny, most guys want to build their backyard to be jumps or something cool, and most women are like, we can't sell the house if we ever sell the house. That's not gonna work.
Yeah. She did ban me. I wanted some big, earth mover tires. You see, the extreme enduro guys, they're all doing it now. But I wanted some of those, and she refused to let me get tires. I had to get something that I could easily clean up or I could burn.
Yeah.
So the wooden wire spools worked out pretty good. Railroad tie walls and hillbilly table wire spools were the go-to trials obstacles.
Were you guys racing on there, or just kind of staying at your house, just kind of messing around with bikes?
We raced a few times, but races wasn't much local. There was no trials, so we would take off, every other month and go to some trials event in Tennessee or so. But as far as enduros, they came through about every 3 months. We'd have something local enough. So we had a riding park down there that we were members of, and we mostly just rode with those people.
Okay.
So we did a lot of recreational riding, but weren't chasing a series or anything most of the time we were down there. So
I gotcha.
riding down there, just the population was so much smaller, and it was more rural that there just, wasn't a whole lot going on down there.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of humidity and sunshine, but other than that, nothing.
Sticky humid.
Sticky humidity. Sticky. 3 weeks out of the summer, you're like, I'm not even going outside.
Yeah.
Just not going to do it.
You always get that one guy. It's not that bad.
It's not that bad. Like, man, you're crazy. You Northerners can't handle it.
I saw the picture was also of you riding a trials bike up on a car. Where was that
Oh, that was awesome. We were down at an event, and that was one of the obstacles, was going over this car. And I absolutely was thrilled to go over that car. That might be the coolest obstacle I've ever ridden on.
That would be pretty sweet.
It was.
How long ago was that?
Oh, gosh. That's when we were still living in Indiana. So that had to be 10 years ago or so. Probably 08, 09, something like that. Yeah.
All right. Man. Yeah, you have basically done everything.
I don't know about that.
On a bike. So, if you could you talk about the day of your accident?
Yeah, man, that was a hot mess. I was riding out at a local guy's property. We were actually practicing on a Thursday for a national enduro that we had Sunday. So, we'd leave Friday, get there Saturday, race Sunday, come back Monday. So we were just doing a loop at his house. He has a really nice compound out there to ride on. And we were actually just taking our last loop. It's always that last one. One more.
Yeah.
That's always when, it goes bad.
The worst.
The worst. We should never do one more. If anybody says one more, you should say, nope, I'm done. But that's not how our brains work. We're like, yeah, we'll do that one more. And that's when it all goes to hell in a handbasket. But
you can't even talk yourself out of it. You tried to, I know one.
Oh, yeah.
I know
one more is bad.
Yeah.
But you're like, I'm going to do it anyway. It'll be fine. It's going to be that guy that crashes this time. So we were out riding, and we were probably 400 yards from the end of our last loop. And we had a little dip to get through, and it was a little muddy. I just put brand new tires on my bike the day before. And we kind of had to come down this dip and up another side, so I blipped the throttle pretty good just so I didn't have to, have a whole lot of traction coming up the other side. Just use more momentum. Well, the throttle hung on that freaking bike. And as we were going up the other hill, it just started, kept climbing and was going to, wheelie up and loop out, kind of flip over. So when it started raising, I just kind of slid off the back of the seat and was like, see you, motorcycle, you're on your own. I'm just going to sit here and hang out on this hill. Maybe I fall down. Maybe I can even stand up and not even fall down. Well, I guess with that throttle being stuck and the tire still digging, it caught and launched the bike in the air. Well, then gravity took the bike and pulled it back down the hill. And the bike pretty much hit me right in the chest. And the last thing I remember was putting my arms up, to kind of protect myself from this motorcycle that's now coming at me. Well, when it landed on me, it sucked my left arm right in front of the rear wheel, so in between the shock and the rear wheel. And with that spinning tire, it just took all the skin off that arm, unfortunately. And it really messed up my right hand, too, with trying to grab the tire to stop it. Wasn't the smartest move, but in the split-second decision I had, that's what I went for. So, luckily, the other people I was riding with got the bike shut down, did everything 100% right, tourniqueted my arm, One went to call the ambulance. One stayed with me. They're feeding me water. I was holding my arm above my head. I was kind of dazed, but it didn't hurt as bad as it should have. It hurt, but it wasn't as bad as it should have hurt. So, that was my major injury. But also, with the bike laying on me, it was sprocket side down. And I had a plastic chest protector on, and the sprocket was eating through it. And I actually got a few scars on my chest where the sprocket had eaten through that. So that thing was coming for me if it hadn't been for the rest of the people there to get the bike shut down. So that's one good reason to never ride alone,
Yeah.
When I got to the hospital, they went through, treated everything. I still had my arm. It just, you could tell some of the muscle and everything was missing. My buddy that got the bike shut off, and a couple weeks later was nice to tell me that he could see rubber marks on my bone. I was like, I don't even know that I ever needed to know that, but thanks. So we were at the hospital for like ever, and they were trying to save the arm, and there just wasn't enough blood flow to the end of it. There was just too much of it gone. So they said, man, you're going to lose the arm below the elbow. And, we had prosthetics guys coming in, and they're like, man, below the elbow is not, it's bad, but it's not, it's not the end of the world. You'll be okay. So we went in for surgery, and the doc said, okay. And I was like, man, just save as much as you can, do it. Well, I come back out of surgery, and he had taken the arm below the elbow, but he comes back and says, man, from the tire and the way it was grabbing the muscle and veins and everything, it tore them, and it tore them further up than where the actual damage was. So he said, what we're going to have to do is the damage, even though it doesn't look like it, is above the elbow. He said, we're going to have to take the elbow too. And that changes the whole game. That changes the whole prosthetic world, everything. Every joint and movement you lose is a big, significant impact. So I was like, man, I really don't want to do that. And he's like, man, there's a chance you can save it. He goes, but it's not good. So we fought that fight to save the elbow for about a week until he finally came back in the room and said, look, we either got to take the elbow or you got to find a new doctor. I was like, well, I'm not trying to go that far with it, so let's take the elbow. So then we went back in for surgery, and I was amputated above the elbow then, and then the rest of it was just recovery. So I got out of the hospital. Now I'm above the elbow amputee, and then they started working on the right arm. So they did skin grafts on the right arm.
Where they pulling the skin from?
They pulled the skin from my left thigh, but I saw how far they shaved, and I was a little worried that they may have taken it a little too close to where I didn't want them to take skin from, So luckily it didn't have to go that far, but I had 3 skin grafts. One failed, but ended up healing. It was on my left leg. I had one that took really good on my right forearm, and then I had another one fail on my right palm. So that, since it was my only hand, they were really concerned and wanted to try to make it the best they could. So we're like, okay, we're going to do another artificial skin graft. So we did that, and it failed too. So then we're back to, okay, we're taking more skin from you, and we're going to do this with a full thickness skin graft. Literally pinch some skin together, cut it off, sew it to something else. So they ended up taking it from my upper right arm just below my armpit, so it was more or less like a skin lift, like a facelift. They pinched the skin together, cut it off, and sewed it back together tighter, and put that on there. And it took, but it looks like a travesty. It looks like they took 3 whacks at it and they didn't work out. But it's real fragile and sensitive. But it is.
Yeah, do you have feeling there?
A little bit. So I can feel pressure. I can't really feel, touch, but I can feel pressure in it.
What about where they pull the skin from? What's that like?
It's good. There's no worries there. So it looks like I've got a big, rectangle cut out of my thigh, but it's all functioning there. So
okay.
Yeah, that's one of the good things, I guess. I didn't really have to worry about that.
So how many surgeries did you have?
Oh lordy. Well, heck, I just had one 2 months ago, so I'm at least up in the, low teens, probably, something like that. And unfortunately, a lot of them are going to be ongoing on my left arm because of the way the nerves grow. The nerves continue to grow, but since there's nowhere for them to go, they bunch up in knots into what they call neuromas, and then they start to hurt because the nerves are all tangled up. They don't know what's going on, so they have to go in and pretty much give it a nerve haircut. Go in and trim them off so that they're not just bundled up.
Will that be continuous?
Yeah, that should be pretty continuous. Nobody knows how continuous, but the one I just had late January was the nerve haircut one. So
wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that'll be kind of.
I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, it does when you think about it, but it's not something you'd ever think about.
Right.
So it's weird.
So your first initial time in the hospital, how long you been for?
3 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, 3 weeks. Yeah. I don't remember a whole lot of it, luckily.
Yeah, when I came and visited you, you seemed pretty out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, there were a lot of people I forgot. A lot of days I forgot. I don't know what all drugs they were pushing through me, but I think the time was much better for me than like Kim and my dad and people who were coming every day.
Yeah.
I think it was much more painful on them than it was on me.
Yeah, you seem like, oh, you're here.
Hey, I'm gonna take a nap. Good seeing you.
Yeah. So, how long into it? You said you talked to the prosthetic people. Was that initial thought right away? You were gonna go that route, or were you just how?
Oh, absolutely. I didn't know anything about prosthetics, but absolutely that was the idea. I was like, heck yeah, I'm just gonna get a prosthetic. It won't be an arm, but it'll be something. So it took about a year for that to actually come about, and unfortunately, it was a pretty hard blow when I got it because it was significantly less functional than I'd hoped.
Yeah.
It just didn't work well for much of anything. So I kind of had I was kind of riding, a normal level of, mood and everything. And that hit, and it kind of was a blow. I kind of took a step down, like, oh man, this isn't going to work. This isn't that great. So I didn't know what to do, but we just kind of kept on with it. And eventually I kind of decided that I'm better off without it.
Okay.
I still have it. I still try to go forward with it. I've gotten a second one that's a little more high tech, and it works a little bit better. But by the time the elbow doesn't have a motor in it, so I have to physically move the elbow, then lock it into whatever place I want, and then I can open and close the hand. So by the time that I do all that, I can usually have done it with my other hand and just be done with it.
Right.
I can usually do it twice with my regular hand and not have had to position this arm into a position to actually do something. So getting it to do something, I can get it to do it, but it's just not really worth it. It's so hard to get it to do it that it just becomes tedious and more work to make it function than it is just to kind of go about it one-handed.
Do they hook it up to your nervous system at all?
Yeah, like it has sensors in it. So like if you're going to do like a bicep flex, that closes the hand. If you're going to do like a tricep extension, it'll open it. And the harder you pull, the faster or tighter it opens. It's real hard to control with that as far as grip strength. The more
you crush a lot of cans.
You crush a lot of cans, yes.
So every time you go for a beer, it's
every time you go for a beer, you're probably gonna squish it or drop it. Either you're not squeezing it tight enough or it's squished. So the in between is really hard. And a lot of it is just getting your finite muscle control down, but a lot of it is how well you've put it on. So if it shifts or you get sweaty or something, it changes every time you do it. So it's not real consistent, and that's another one of its unfortunate drawbacks. But if I had managed to keep the elbow and just had the hand, and I could position the hand anywhere I wanted, it would have been a lot better.
Okay.
But the elbow was a pretty bad day. That kind of took it back to, well, this is really gone.
Yeah.
So
your accident was in 16, right? 15.
It was 16. What was it? March? June? I don't even remember at this point.
So how long after that did you get back on a bike? Because I know you ride now.
Uh, the first bike I got back on was a weird vintage trials bike because vintage days was coming
Yeah.
up. And I just got on it and one-handed it around the yard, kind of pushed it off like a scooter, clicked it in gear, and just took it for a little stroll around the yard. But that was before my skin grafts, so my skin grafts on my palm, on my right hand, were what really kept me off the bike for a while because I had no use of either hand. So my right arm's bandaged up, my left arm's gone. Kim had to do some duties that I'm sure she wasn't real fond of, A couple times even in a portalette at a race, this is getting weird.
Two people in a portalette?
Two people in a portalette,
Think about that.
Those weren't great days, but luckily Kim stepped up and I swallowed my pride and we kept going. But probably my first real ride was we went down to Early Wines Indoor Motocross probably that January of 17. And I actually rode the bike around. So, and then in February, we ran the first National Enduro of 17. So that was the first time I was back on the bike for any significant amount of time. And it destroyed my poor right hand with all the skin grafts and all, but it was fun. It was worth it. I was slower than absolute molasses, but I did get through the whole thing.
Man, that's tough right there.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was interesting, to say the least.
So, I know you've been riding all your life. You had that accident, and then right after that, you went back to a two-stroke bike, I'm assuming, and it stuck too.
It did. I think I may have some sort of black cloud, Final Destination thing going on. But, our second year back in the National Enduros, I did get a new bike, and it was another KTM 300, and I had the throttle stick on it again. Luckily, it wasn't that big of a deal. I managed to get, I ended up in a crash, but it, wasn't bad. I wasn't hurt from the crash or anything, but laying next to that bike and hearing the motor rev and scream just as I had before kind of shook me a little bit.
Yeah.
And I had to shut that bike off, and the throttle when I started back up was not stuck. I had to ride it the rest of the way out of the woods. So I'm terrified to ride this thing now. And I put it in the truck. It was Sunday, and I sold it on Monday.
Wow.
So I was just completely done with it. I didn't even know if I'd ride anymore. I was like, this is really weird. And I don't know how I really responded or how I got back to the point where I was like, you know what, this is something I'm going to try again. But that shook me pretty bad, and the whole ride home I was just in an emotional wreck, Didn't know if I was coming or going or if I was sad.
Somebody was out for you?
Yeah. I mean, it was just completely just something I couldn't wrap my head around. So I sold that bike. So at that point, I didn't have a bike. So I was sitting around thinking about what I was going to do. And the bike I had rode the previous year had come up for sale again. And I was like, well, I like that bike. It's not the newest or greatest or best technology, but I never had the throttle stick on me. It was a 4-stroke instead of a 2-stroke. So I bought it back and started playing around with it and kind of got my confidence back a little bit. And then we went back out to racing. So I was starting, I was still thinking, I was like, man, this is, I still don't like this. I don't know why that second throttle stuck. It still had me shook pretty bad. And I wanted a newer bike, but I didn't want to buy something that was, going to have me worried the whole time and not be able to enjoy the riding.
Right.
So I went and bought an Alta, that electric bike, and I love it.
Really?
Yeah.
You still have it?
I still have it.
Oh, I guess I did see it.
Yeah, it is great. The battery life on it won't do an enduro, so I still have to ride gas bikes in the enduro. But like the IXCR hare scrambles and stuff, it'll do that. And I ride the electric bike through that.
And they sound so weird to me.
Oh, they do. They do. It's such a weird feeling to even ride it. It has no gear shifter. I ghost shifted it for 4 hours, before I got used to it. And just the finite traction on it, you can give it so little or so much throttle, and it's just so smooth. I want to say it's so smooth it's like an electric bike, but it is an electric bike. It's that smooth, It's
What's a throttle response like?
It's got 4 different settings. You know, one's the tamest, 4's the wildest, and I won't put it on 4. So,
Really?
I do not ride it on 4. It is a handful. It is too much bike for me on 4. You know, maybe if you were in the sand dunes or somewhere, you know, the desert where you could really rip it and open it up, it'd be useful. But out here in the woods, it's just not. You would have to have a pretty open track and be a really good rider to use 4. So I'm just not there. I like 2.
So is it set up for hare scramble or motocross or anything?
It's set up for a hare scramble. So it's got the suspension done for hare scrambles, an 18-inch rear wheel instead of the 19. I put my Lazy Man's kickstand on there, you know.
Yeah, we just talked about that.
We did.
Before we were recording, all the bikes in this garage all had kickstands, and I was like, "What's this?" He goes, "Man, we're getting older. We can't lean that shit against trees anymore."
Trees are too far away, you know.
Yeah.
You might have to walk 10 or 12 feet.
After they're creased, they all roll away.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. How long does it take to charge that thing?
It takes, if you fully drain it, it is unfortunately about a 3.5 hour process.
I was gonna say longer than that.
Yeah, they've got a rapid charger out for it that it will do it in an hour and a half, but you have to also exchange the battery. You have to put the rapid charger battery in it. The batteries are about $3,000.
Holy cow!
So I have been just waiting.
Yeah.
I've been having the extra 2 hours rather than spend that money on a rapid charger and a battery, but
I feel like I could see you out there trying to tinker with it, and it's just electric, and you're like, oh, I really don't have to do anything.
it is great. There's no air filter. There's nothing to clean on it. Literally, you wash the bike, you lube the chain, and you put it back in the garage.
That's nice.
It has one set of gear oil in it, and you don't have to change it, but every, gosh, what do they recommend? 30 or 40 hours, something like that. So there is zero maintenance on it. It is great.
I hope as much as electric bikes are nice, I don't think I could watch a full on race of like outdoor motocross of 40 electric bikes.
Yeah.
That would just sound like a bunch of bees going by.
It would. It's going to be strange. I think they're coming, and what it's going to evolve into, I have no idea. But it's neat. You know, they've got the power. They could shave a little bit of weight, but the battery life just needs to uptick a little bit, and I think we'll start seeing a lot of electric bikes.
So yours is an Alta?
It's an Alta, yeah.
So they're the only company right now?
No, there's another company called Zero that makes some, but they really make their off-road bike is kind of a dual sport. It doesn't really have suspension set up for racing. Like the Alta runs the same suspension as the KTM's and stuff like that. So they really went out to make a full-blown race bike where Zero is kind of in the dual sport world, maybe I would say. You know, so they don't have a full competition off-road bike, but I think they will. You know, I think it's coming. Zero's a good company, so
yeah.
I'd like to, the more people out there making them, the better. So I think it'd be nice to have a couple different options.
Do they have them for kids?
They have electric bikes in the trials world that the kids ride all the time. They're called OSETs.
Okay.
And the kids ride the bejesus out of them. They're great. And KTM just introduced it's a 50cc, comparative bike that's electric. They haven't been released yet to the public, but they're making them. So it'll be a 50cc equivalent electric bike. So hopefully we're going to start seeing more and more of it. It's interesting. It's a whole different technology.
Oh, man, I was going to say something to that. I don't know. But I just hope they don't completely take over.
Yeah, it's still, I'm a gearhead at heart. I think
just the sound of 2-stroke and 4-stroke, it's just, I don't know. That will never go away.
Yeah, I don't think, it's pretty far into the future, I think, before we'd have to worry about anything going away.
Yeah.
It may be past my riding lifetime, before any of that's ever gone. I don't think. They're coming out with fuel-injected 2-strokes now, it's...
I know what I was going to say. So when you ride now, do you Do you go with another hand, or you go one-handed?
I go with another prosthetic. I call it my motorcycle arm.
Yeah.
But it's more or less a stainless steel tube with a steering dampener in the elbow to give it some resistance, so it's just not flopping. And it's got a coupler on the handlebar. The hand stays attached to the bike, but it breaks away at the wrist. It's got a tether that goes to my right hand, and when my right hand comes off, it pulls that tether and unclicks the left arm at the wrist so that I come off the bike.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I've broken it a few times, you know. I come back to them like, I broke my arm, you know. And she's like, where? I'm like, no, just this one, you know.
Man, you always got to keep people on their feet, I guess.
You do, man, you do.
So what else have you been up to? Just working on bikes mostly?
Yeah, you know, turning the riches myself is, you know, become a little more difficult, but I've been doing a lot of spectating and guiding. Kim does a lot of wrench turning now, and you know, friends like, you know, Danny Ray and Tom Bell have been coming over a lot, and they really do the work. You know, I just kind of oversee it. You know,
You became a supervisor.
I did. You know, just have to figure out how to turn that into money.
Beer money, maybe.
You know, there's plenty of that. You know, yeah, they're good for that. I don't need to get rich from them. I need to get rich some other way. Maybe start playing the lottery.
Yeah,
I'm not sure, but
that's true. They say if you're not playing, you don't have a chance to win.
that is true. That is true. I keep saying I'm going to win it, and I have never bought any tickets. So.
That's what I always say.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, lottery's up. I should play. Nah.
Yeah. Probably my chances aren't great on that.
Dude, man, I appreciate you telling your story. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Yeah, we've known each other forever, and I'm glad to hear your story. And I don't know really a tougher person than you.
Oh man, no! I think anybody stuck in this situation can do it. You know, you don't know what you can do till you get stuck in it.
That's true. I think there's probably some people that would probably just kind of coop up and just call it that.
Yeah, maybe, but you know, I think a lot of people are stronger than they ever give themselves credit for.
That's true.
Know?
I mean, that's true, and maybe that's what you saw.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just figured as long as I can keep waking up and complaining about it, it's a good thing.
Kim's probably like, God, another day.
Yeah, another day with this guy.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks for having me over, and yeah, I'm sure I'll see you soon.
Man, buddy, I appreciate every minute of it. It was a great time.
All right, I'll see you.
See you, buddy.